guys, welcome to today's training. So, it's Tuesday morning. I'm excited that you're here. If you're new to me, I'm Burtcher, and I help codependents get unstuck in their healing, get unstuck in their recovery. And help them rediscover their happiness and their well-being after narcissistic abuse, relationships, love addiction, all that fun stuff. So, today we're going to talk about something that tends to be a big wrestle for people. It was definitely a wrestle for me. Did I make a mistake by leaving? Did I make a mistake by leaving this relationship, by ending things? So, I want you to ponder that. Is that something you wrestle with or have wrestled with in your journey, or that you're wrestling with right now? Let me know in the comments below. And as you do that, I'm going to get this shared out to the community. The community is your safe haven where you can find support, peace, love, tools, guidance, and shelter in your journey out of abuse, out of neglect, and back into sanity, peace, and connection in your world. Helps you get unstuck in your healing, helps you get re-engaged with actually changing your life. You can find the link above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for being here. I'm going to share that out right now. Yay, there it is. Cool. And all the buttons with this Facebook update have changed all the thingies. So, there we go. Come on. And boom. Okay. So, good morning. Did I make a mistake by leaving? How to know? I'll tell you, in my journey out of several relationships, marriage, previous dating relationships and stuff, that is something I wrestled with a lot. I wrestled with it quite a bit, as I considered ending relationships with people that were toxic to me in my world. And a lot of times there was a lot of shame and guilt involved in this process, where I had this belief that relationships are permanent. Relationships deserve an unconditionality to them, and that we're supposed to work them out regardless of what's going on. And that's an important kind of dynamic we need to confront here, because codependency, and often with even narcissistic systems, the concept of a relationship, once it's established, should be permanent in that thinking. It should be like, oh, this should last forever. And I just have to make it work. I just have to force it. I just have to cause it to do things. I shouldn't have to change it. There's this notion I was taught growing up that any two people can make a relationship work. And I'm just going to call it out. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. And this comes down to understanding, first of all, that relationships are a consensual thing. They are not an obligation. And they are not an entitlement. No one is entitled to a relationship with you. Not your parents, not your children, and not your spouse, not your ex-spouse, not your boyfriend, not your girlfriend, not your friends. No one. Healthy relationship is built on a premise of consent, where we agree to be in a particular type of relationship. It's a friendship, an acquaintanceship, or businessship, or an intimate relationship, a committed one, whatever it might be. And this is important, guys, because codependency and narcissistic dynamics tend to go towards obligation. Well, narcissists always go towards our obligation because they feel entitled. So they give the codependent an obligation to meet the narcissist's wants and needs and bidding, whatever that might be. The codependent feels obligated to meet their needs because they believe that the narcissist is incapable of meeting their own needs, and they're also seeking some form of connection by giving the narcissist their cookie. Cookie is whatever supply the narcissist wants. This is not really built on a place of honesty or kindness or respect or valuing how each other feels. Instead, it's built on this concept of obligation and expectation. This is why relationships go haywire, because we come into relationships from this premise a lot. We see it a lot in reality TV. We see it a lot in movies, where there's this onus of expectation and obligation rather than consent. Like, hey, let's get to know each other. Let's see what we're about. Let's discover who we are. together and build agreements within this container we call relationship so we can understand each other and meet each other in a way that's compassionate, attentive, and accountable to each other. See, from this premise of consent, then we can approach that question of, did I make a mistake by leaving? Now we can start to qualify this question. We can start to understand the criteria that comes into this. And I do this based on a compatibility and abuse spectrum. Okay? So the first question I ask myself is, was there abuse? Was there abuse? So I'm going to write it down too so I can make a little list out of this. More formal, but was there abuse? And the reason why I start with abuse is because abuse violates consent. It violates your boundaries. It creates unsafety. It creates a threat in the relationship. It removes safety from it. You can no longer be yourself in the relationship. Instead, you're stuck enduring something. So, was there abuse? If the answer is yes, then leaving the relationship was a healthy choice. Because the first thing always is your well-being. In relationships, it's all about well-being first. You choose yourself first. So well-being, is my well-being nurtured and protected and safe and valued in this relationship? My well-being, are they valuing my well-being? If they're abusing me, they are not valuing my well-being. Makes sense to leave. Boom. Second question. All right, any thoughts or questions on that? And post in the comments below on it, because some of this can really be like activating. So were they abusive? Boom. Oh, I left. 2, were they accountable? Did they take ownership and actually change behaviors in the things that were going on in the relationship? Often, if you've answered yes to the first question, then the answer to the second question is no. Because people who really are committed to change are going to own it and they're going to start working it out. It's going to be a wrestle for them. They're going to have their little slips and stuff. We all do. But they're going to come back and go, I keep screwing this up. I need to seek out better help or more help or actual help. They're going to take responsibility for their actions. They're going to become accountable, or they're going to display accountability and integrity to it. Now, let's say the person was abusive and then they started taking ownership of it. Now, again, ownership doesn't mean, I'm sorry I did that. Ownership means I'm changing the behavior. I realize that I'm hurting you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt me. I'm changing the behavior. Apology does not equal ownership. Apology plus change equals ownership. Okay? For me, especially in a dating relationship, if abuse shows up, I'm out. See ya. Have a great day. Because it's a violation of my consent. It's a violation of my safety. That's why that's question number 1. Now, if you're in an established relationship and abuse is occurring and you're attempting to give them an opportunity to change, then you need to be very clear with yourself about what is not happening. Are they actually changing the behavior, or are they doing a pivot and blaming you for what they do and what they choose? Because if that's going on, the game's over. That's abuse. Easy peasy. Not necessarily kind, not necessarily, I wouldn't say kind, it would be, it's a hard thing to accept that the relationships we might be in aren't actually doing what we want them to do, or what we deserve, what we need. And that's hard. It's not necessarily easy, it's simple, but it is a difficult thing to confront this in our world. But if you've left, or you're wrestling with that choice, do I leave? It comes down to well-being first. Is my well-being and safety valued in this relationship? The reason why is well-being is an essential ingredient to your happiness, to your long-term joy. Well-being being attacked means you're in danger, and then your nervous system will respond by going into a sympathetic response. You'll become hypervigilant. You'll move into a trauma freeze-fawn loop, and now you have all of this to deal with. Relationships aren't designed for that. That's not their purpose. Their relationships are not there to traumatize you. They're not there to activate you or make you face something in you. They're there to be a safe, nurturing container to grow through. Grow as a human being, not grow as an I'm going to work out my trauma, although that's a byproduct of healthy relationships. It's grow as an individual. Discover more of who you are and in who we are as a relationship and who they are as an individual. That's the real work. It's not about, we got to make this dysfunction functional. If abuse is happening, you don't have anything to work out until that person goes off and works their shit out and you work yours out. Generally, as people grow, and my experience over the last 12 and a half years of doing this, is that when people that come in a relationship from a toxic or unhealthy angle grow, they outgrow the relationship because how they were getting their needs shifts so much they no longer need the relationship. The relationship no longer really functions for them. So you can leave. It's reasonable to leave if, a relationship doesn't function for you, which can be it's question number 3. Is this meeting my well-being? Is this meeting my needs? So let's say they don't abuse. Let's say they're accountable and own their shit, but you're empty. You're unhappy. It doesn't click anymore. You've outgrown the relationship. And by this point, you've likely had 1 billion different discussions and trying to re-engage the relationship and get more connection or more fulfillment, more expansion for yourself. That's understandable and completely reasonable because you're trying to work through it, because sometimes this does work out. It's like, oh, we found our groove, we're expanding together. And sometimes it doesn't. And it's okay to leave if the relationship isn't fulfilling you on a chronic basis. Because your well-being matters. Your happiness matters more than the relationship. We put a lot of pressure on relationships. We put a lot of importance and significance on them. And I'm one that wants to balance that out a bit with the individual needs. Because if one person isn't happy in the relationship, no one's really going to be. Because what happens, you get this lopsided experience in it, and while one person A may be getting much of what they want, person B is being drained. So the relationship isn't functioning anymore. It's just generating resentment and misery. And if that imbalance is incorrectable because of an incompatibility in individuals, the growth the individuals in a relationship have experienced, it's okay to say that this is over. See, relationships have a right to start and end. They are finite. And we're willing to accept that. Then we can be more honest and in connection with the relationship, with where it's at now, and make healthy choices based on that relationship's current position. I call it discovery. We discover the person, we discover ourselves, we discover the relationship perpetually. And commitment is one of those things we discover. We find that we have a high grade of common natural compatibility, then we let that expand. We let that do its thing. But sometimes that compatibility ends. And we got to make hard choices there. So those 3 and the 4th question, the one that really is the linchpin, is if this relationship stayed the same for the rest of my life, would I be happy? That gets you thinking. Because, well, frankly, we have no power to change the other person. We really have no right to demand that they change. Because demanding them to change is a violation of consent. Now, if they want to change because they want to be different than where they are, you win. Cool. Beyond that, we don't really have the right to demand it from them. Because again, it violates consent. this is the hard part with relationships, is they are an agreement of understanding and cooperation or consent. They are not an agreement of control and of obligation and expectation. If they respect the autonomy of the other individual and they respect our autonomy, then we can build honest agreements and bridges between each other. And that's where we get into this healthiness with a consensual, alive, breathing relationship. You're welcome, Kelly. Because I know how hard this is. I've done it numerous times. In fact, today is the 10-year anniversary when my ex-wife and I separated. So I've been there. And it's not an easy thing. We can be in love with people whom we are no longer compatible with. We can be in love with people whom they're toxic to our long-term well-being. And that feels complicated because we think love is prime. I call it the fantasy of the primacy of emotion. We think the emotion defines the reality of the relationship, and that isn't it. The reality of the relationship is how it's adding to and maintaining our well-being and our happiness long term. So that's a rough one to swallow. But the fundamental behind it is that when we build relationships on consent, build them on discovery, we start to understand who they are and who we are. And from there, naturally perpetual relationships that have a long-term natural commitment form. Because the way we work together perpetuates the commitment. That's kind of the cool thing here, is you get relationships that by their nature last. You don't have to force it to work. By the nature of you and the other individual, you are working it through because you want the relationship. You want that person in your world. So it gets out of this idea of obligation and expectation and back to this primary concept of consent. And that's where we find a lot more joy, because then the relationship's not a burden. Instead, it's a source of joy. So if you've been wrestling with this question, use these 4 questions. Is there abuse? Are they accountable? Changing their shit? Am I happy? Am I okay with this staying the way it is for the rest of my life? Because if you can't say yes to number 4, you're not in a relationship that you want to be committed to for a long time. So you need to look at what needs to change. And if any of the things in that changing spectrum fall into abuse, you probably need to look at ending the relationship. Because abuse doesn't change all that much. People who abuse come from an entitlement mentality, not a... yes, they have trauma. I hear this argument all the time, but they have trauma. Yeah. So do you. Are you out there abusing people? And as someone who was once abusive, I'll tell you, it's not the abuse, it's the entitlement to do it. Because we feel like our pain justifies our action. It's a scary position, and be very careful with people who think that way. Speaking as one who used to think that way. That's how I felt with my trauma. Oh, of course I can be angry and throw tantrums and demand things. But I've been through hell. No, I had no right to demand and do that to other people. None. My trauma didn't justify it. I had to grow up. Get out of my 3-year-old mentality and grow the fuck up, to be blunt. So yeah. And that didn't change because someone stayed in a relationship with me, by the way. That changed because I kept being confronted with my bad behavior and people stopped tolerating it. It woke my brain up going, I don't want to be this person. This is not who I want to be. So I made the changes. And I didn't get those relationships back. Those are gone. Those are done. So, guys, think about that. Reach into and give yourself the compassion and understanding you need to make the decisions you need with your relationships. Now, if you've left your relationship and there was abuse present, a lack of accountability, or you just weren't happy, consider giving yourself permission to be free of any guilt or shame. You did what was healthy for you. Because in my book, you come first. It's a me and you order. Narcissists are me, me, me. Codependents are you, you, you. Interdependence is me and you. I must know and understand what I need and what works for me before I can say yes to you in a consensual, honest way. That's how it works. There you go, guys. I appreciate you. Just a reminder, on the 23rd of this month, about 3 weeks and 2 days from now, we have the Unmasking the Narcissist workshop. I'll be posting the link in the comments below. You're going to want to join that if you're wrestling with narcissistic abuse. If you want to understand what a narcissist is, how they think, what's going on there, and what to do for your own healing in recovery from a narcissist. Because that's what I do. I help you get unstuck in your healing so you can move on in your life, have that happiness, have that peace, have that connection and sanity again in your world. And this workshop, it's free. It's going to help you understand what they are, what's been going on, the SAD cycle, the EDD cycle, intermittent reinforcement, get you connected to the path to healing there. So that's coming up on the 23rd. I thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you. Love you. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I will see you guys in our next video. Have a great and safe day out there. Bye-bye.